This story is about 4 orphans who went through the plots of the most notable blockbusters of the last 20 years. The first orphan girl is Lucy. She lived with an old museum curator, but then the day came when he was killed. Lucy found him in one of the halls of the museum and immediately realized that there was some kind of mystery. She also realized that the curator had been murdered by an angry albino with a whip. After all, he was standing there whipping himself. He chased Lucy, but she managed to solve the mystery and was rewarded with a Wonka chocolate bar with a golden ticket inside. The second special orphan was Edward. He lived in a Mexican monastery where they made him eat dead cats for breakfast. The other children beat him. Well, at least one chubby kid in a wrestler costume. When he mugged Edward, the latter found a golden ticket with an invitation to Wonka's factory. The third orphan, Susan, was on a plane with a lot of snakes and a cheap Sam Jackson knockoff. He was obviously defective, because for no reason he threw Susan off the plane. She would have remained a red stain on the pavement, but then Paris Hilton came along and softened the fall. She had a Wonka candy bar with her, and Susan took the golden ticket from her. The last orphan was Peter, who is no Parker at all. He was trained in a special school for mutants. Peter's main ability was his invincible cowardice. He also had a thing for blue girls, like Mystique, who used to wiggle her ass in the school hallways. But when Peter came up to ask her out, Wolverine's cosplayer and his buddies showed up. He didn't like the fact that some nerd was hitting on his girlfriend. Peter was saved from a fight by Magneto. Then he opened the locker door so Peter banged his head on it. Wonka's gold ticket chocolate fell out of the locker, and Peter went to the chocolate factory too. When all 4 arrived at Willy Wonka's, he showed them the shop where everything is edible. At least that's what the orphans thought. Edward rushed over to the chocolate river with all sorts of goodies floating in it. But it turned out to be the local sewer.
That's actually the sewer line. Yeah.
That wasn't Wonka's worst secret, however. He revealed to them the secret of making candy and chocolates. They taste so good because Willy adds real human organs to them. And to prove it, the Oompa Loompas took Edward's nuts, they took Lucy's heart, they took Peter's tooth and threw it into the popcorn box. And Susan got the worst of it. Her head was doused in caramel. But the orphans clearly didn't use the extracted body parts because they survived the withdrawal. That psychotic Willie George McFly had locked them in a room to mock them at his leisure. And so, as he went to dismember them, the orphans rushed to hide. Lucy found an old wardrobe, out of which came a pile of junk and a naked girl. Lucy climbed inside and found herself on the snowy forest edge. The first thing she did was to test her tongue by licking the metal pole in the cold. Mr. Tumnus came to her rescue. His father had been amusing himself with the goat on the farm, and now Tumnus' lower body was covered in wool. He told her that Lucy had found herself in Narnia, and here interspecies relations are not forbidden, as long as it was consensual. Goatfoot invites Lucy to his house and shows her how he lived.
Check out my plasma. Say hello to my little friend!
His house is always full of rappers and chicks, and his fridge is full of champagne. After getting to know Lucy better, Mr. Tumnus asks her to leave. He says she is in danger. To make Lucy understand how things work here, Tumnus gives her a film camera that has all the answers. On the tape, he tells her that the ruler of Narnia, the evil white bitch, has ordered her to give out all the people. And Mr. Tumnus was going to turn Lucy in, but he couldn't. He tells her how evil this white bitch is, and then advises her to run away. After that, the tape self-destructs, nearly ripping Lucy's head off. Edward also found the magic wardrobe. Once in Wonderland, he heard a mini diesel drifting nearby. A sled loaded with Dominic Toretto's coolness rolled up to him. Sitting in it was Stifler's mother, whom everyone here called White Bitch for some reason. Seeing the man in front of her, Bitch promised him the throne of Narnia if he would bring her the other orphans. Her driver tried to say something about the prophecy, but White Bitch didn't let him finish. She turned on her charms to the maximum to seduce the orphan. Then she told Edward to bring Lucy, Peter, and Susan to her white castle. Edward wanted to get into that castle as soon as possible, so he went after the other orphans. He met them near the entrance to the closet. Lucy tried to warn the others of the danger, but no one believed her. Then she took them to Mr. Tumnus. However, he was not at home. The only one there was a talking beaver. He told the orphans that he and Tumnus were lovers, and White Bitch was against same-sex relationships, which is why she took Tumnus away to jail, and also because he was helping people. Beaver tells the orphans about the prophecy that they must destroy White Bitch with the help of Aslo. And Peter will play a major role in this, but he's not ready for that kind of responsibility, because once, when he was Superman, he already screwed up by getting shot in the eye. Edward realizes that he may lose his promised throne. He escapes while the others unravel the mystery of their origins.
We're all in the painting.
It turns out that they are quadruplets and were born of the same parents. This is what it says on the birth certificates they found. Edward goes to the white bitch and gives her Lucy, Peter, and Susan. Stifler's mother summons the albino Silas and orders him to kill the orphans. Meanwhile, they look for Edward, but meet Mr. Tumnus. He has escaped from Bitch. Tumnus sends the orphans to Hogwarts, where they must be trained before meeting Aslo. At the School of Wizardry and Mental Deviance, the orphans meet Harry Potter and his friends Ron and Hermione. Hermione has clearly experienced the effects of Harry's wand. The trio trains Lucy, Peter, and Susan, after which they go to Aslo. Edward is put in the same cell with the illustrious pirate captain Jack Swallows, and he proposes an ingenious escape plan by stabbing Edward with a knife. When the guards come, he knocks them out and brings the naive Eddie to his ship, where the pirates read a rap song.
We are the pirates of the Caribbean. Yes, the pirates.
Jack figures out where to sail, and when Edward tells him that his relatives have gone to Aslo, he is immobilized by Bink. It turns out that Captain Jack Swallows used to work for White Bitch, but when she didn't need him, she killed the pirate. At the same time, the three orphans arrive at the rebel camp, where all the prominent movie heroes of the day have gathered. Waiting for them in his tent is Aslo, half lion, half human, and he is ready to help the orphans, but first they must do something for him. After he's done with all three of them, he goes to the prison where Bitch is holding Edward. And while Ed sits in the same cell as Mel Gibson, Aslo Asian copy fights Silas. And after defeating the albino, he frees Edward. But Aslo himself also dies. When the orphans leave, he is killed by White Bitch. They learn of this only at the rebel camp. Beaver offers the four of them to lead Aslo army into battle. They agree, but first they have to throw a freaky party so they won't be so scared to fight in the morning. During the party, Mystique hits on Peter. She finds out he's going to be a king soon, so she decides to grease up on him. Peter seizes the opportunity and makes Mystique swell to the size of a small killer whale. The next morning, all four of them were out on the battlefield. The rebels had disappeared somewhere. They simply didn't want to fight after what Susan had done the previous night. The only one who came to her rescue was a suddenly revived Captain Jack Swallows. But Bitch got rid of him too, with the help of the octopus thrower. The orphans had to fight as a foursome. Peter, of course, tried to escape, but then he overcame his cowardice and led his family into battle. Only they were killed instantly, and as Peter crawled away from White Bitch barely alive, he found Adam Sandler's remote in the grass and paused the scene. Then he admired the boobs in slow motion, and only then did he heal Susan, Edward, and Lucy. Using their newfound Hogwarts skills, the orphans dealt with the White Bitch's paused army. They wanted to put her herself on trial, but Captain Jack Swallows showed up and crushed her to a pulp. All four of them were crowned. They lived a long life and grew old together. When they were many years old, they stopped for a need in a snow-covered forest. Here they saw a magic closet and entered it. When the orphans passed through it, they were young again. Borat's cosplayer met them in the room, and then all four of them were crushed by Captain Jack Swallows on his watermill wheel. And so ended the story of the poor orphans.